All right. Chris, just a sound check to make sure you can hear us all right and we can hear
I
you.
just kept going.
Let me turn on the chat.
Hi.
Oh, okay, good enough. I'll let you control your own mute, and recording is in process.
All right, we're ready to start.
Everything is ready for you to start.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
We can hear you great.
Okay. Perfect.
We can hear you even gooder now.
Oh, good.
That's an awesome there.
You wanna, we've got roll, we have everybody present. Let's start with Resort Tax Committee openings and term of service. Mr. Mayor, or
So we have, and Lonnie, please feel free to jump in and correct me here. I don't have my sheet notes in front of me. Actually, Danae has put this together for me. So I'm gonna give you my best summary. We have it posting. We have not yet received any applicants. So my concern, and part of why we threw that out there, is because I heard all these, there was 2 or 3 side conversations going on. Oh, so-and-so would be great, so-and-so would be great, so-and-so would be great. Well, guess what? We ran the ad so they can put in their application. Now they have to put in their application, or we can't do nothing with it.
yeah, okay.
So Thursday is the deadline.
All right, so we need to, I didn't know that, so did anyone tell, Brent that was the deadline and that it was open?
No, the posting is open, so
Okay.
there we go. That's why we're mentioning it now.
All right.
So,
So you did get Joyce, or did you?
I can check, we got it.
You got it before you posted it, but it was like 2 days before you posted it.
Yeah, so we probably need to have her repost it, so let me
Where do they find this? Is it on,
It's on Carbon County News.
what do they have to do? Submit a letter of interest to
Lonnie.
Kalani?
I believe it is Lonnie.
This is sitting up with this pretty towel.
Okay.
And then the secondary part had to do with how did we want to figure out the staggering? Because the way your bylaws are written up, it was like, we appoint this many, we start out with a 3-year term, a 2-year term, or 1-year term sort of thing, and then it was gonna fix itself.
That should have been in our appointment.
It is, but guess what?
What?
Everybody you have expires at exactly the same time. So the
No.
staggering doesn't happen anymore. So how would you like to?
Well, it should, we should have we not been reappointed on that staggered schedule?
Right.
Well,
So I have that paperwork. I don't have that here with me. But who should I follow up with to tell me how it is we're gonna do it to be in keeping in the spirit?
Probably Tom.
Because Danae pulled the history of all the appointments, so I can tell you when they were pulled and when they were done.
yeah.
And we just need to make sure we're meeting what the objective is.
The objective originally was so that we wouldn't have an entire committee expire on the same year.
Right.
So, however you want to adjust, I think you can, by council resolution or somehow, just do a reappointment. If everyone's expired at the same time, just do a reappointment and reappoint for the stagger, and then we just have to
Okay.
keep track of that so that
Who's your current chair right now?
I am,
Okay, so you and I in our follow-up meeting, we're gonna review that,
okay.
and so that I have my script for next Tuesday.
Hey, Brett, how are you?
Oh, you're here, I'm
So,
sending you a
sir,
text right
we're
now.
talking about you, that the posting is posted, the deadline is Thursday, and I yet do not have any, applications now that the posting is posted.
So would you please send Lonnie,
If you are interested in the position, now is the time.
And I can delete the text I'm sending you right now.
Or you can just press send and it's a reminder half done.
Yeah, he's here, he'll get it.
Hey, Lonnie. This is Danae. Question for you. We received Joy's application, letter of interest for the resort tax committee, but it was before the posting. Do you think we could still use that letter that we received, even though it was before the posting?
I'm gonna cover our bases and say no, but what I will do is I will reach out to her because she was also going to apply for the, sustainability. And they're not mutually exclusive by any means.
We have what, 2, 3 openings?
We have 3, I believe, but some of those can be, do reappointments have to apply? I think to cover our bases.
no,
the answer is yes.
No,
Oh,
we haven't in the past. Reappointments, usually, if somebody is gonna be reappointed, we just ask them, hey, do you wanna be reappointed? And if they said, yeah, then you just reappoint them. If not, then you put it out, for an opening.
because I know on the planning board, we are posting
But-
Al's position to cover our bases on that one too.
Yeah, that's a little different,
How so? I mean, I'm not saying it's not, but convince me.
because you're actually passing,
Okay,
yeah, quasi judicial, thank you, we're just more of an advisory board,
okay.
in my opinion, but.
Oh, no, that's good. All right. So you and I are gonna meet tomorrow then and hash this out so that it's done.
Okay.
And I will reach out to Joy, and, we have already reached out to Brett.
I mean, if we need to resend an email, then we can do that, I mean, that's fine, but.
And assuming we get that done, then,
I just don't
then
wanna
we
lose
can
anybody
appoint,
else.
pardon?
I don't wanna lose anybody else.
No, we're good.
I know, if I have to send an
Yeah.
email, I'm done. So.
Anything other than 8 o'clock is available for me tomorrow.
Okay, let me look at that after this, because
Okay.
I can't do
Can multitask.
too many things at the same time. I mean, I can, but.
You saw him correct that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can do a couple things at the same time, but not too many things at the same time. Okay, so what I was looking at, Jeremy, report from the State Resort Tax Committee.
Yeah, so, Dave was there too, which is great. Super productive meeting. If you got the agenda slide originally, came through that whole agenda.
We did tweak it, so we have.
What's a summary of what their purpose is?
Summary of purpose is basically to serve as a point of collaboration for, the resort tax jurisdictions, and, share knowledge and that kind of thing. And also to lobby in favor of resort tax and its preservation.
Within our jurisdictions.
Within our jurisdictions and statewide at the legislature.
There's just an interesting, I don't know if this is applicable or not, but when the governor, opened the meeting for his, property tax review committee, he said that, a sales tax was a non-starter. So he said they could come up with any way to deal with property tax except the sales tax. So he made that very clear that was not even on the table for them to put as an option, so. I don't know how that affects the resort taxes and the resort tax things, but it in a way, it's probably helpful because it means that you're not gonna have a statewide sales tax come and eliminate the resort tax.
Right.
But it also means that, there's not an appetite for sales tax expansion, so.
And a lot of that has to do with sizes though too, because right now it's just small, the requirements of who gets to have it are.
It's very
pretty
small,
down.
yes. I think there's probably some of these communities are worried they're gonna grow beyond where their thing is.
They actually had a couple of those that had that, and they have to modify. They're able to keep it going, but there was some tricks along the way, but that was one of the discussions.
Whitefish is over the population limit.
Yeah. Anything that we need to follow up with, or?
Basically our representation on that,
Okay.
position. I was there to vote, so I did. If we want you to be our representative as our mainline person, then I think all we need to do is send in the form stating as such. And, we did amend the bylaws to, include like, what did they call it? Yeah,
Yeah.
designees.
Basically,
Yeah,
if you're a person,
it almost seems like the community should have a vote, not any individual, right? Like, you know, like, I'm representing Red Lodge today, okay, you get to vote for Red Lodge, you know?
so what it is, you're our designated person, and actually, we can follow up, but I believe we did make that, but we also
Okay.
addressed, I called out and said, but what happens if that person isn't here? And so you basically, this committee can designate a proxy,
Yeah,
which
okay,
is what we did, and so he was your proxy at the last meeting.
okay, great, perfect.
So,
I
yeah,
did-
they changed it to accommodate that.
I did ask Tammy that, and she never did get back to me on it, whether, we could have it be like Tom and then somebody else from the Resort Tax Review Committee if in his absence. So we haven't completely turned in that form just because I haven't gotten an answer on that.
But that was before the meeting, right?
Yep.
I think at this point, go ahead and submit it as Tom is our designated. We did it during the meeting, but I don't think it'll hurt to follow it up and just say, this is to follow up the actions during the meeting. And then we did amend the bylaws so that we can have a designee if he's not able to make it. And to
Okay.
Tom's point, we can kind of pick who that is, but hopefully that would be a guided presence, not just whoever happened to dial in that day.
There is a note in your slide that you sent out that says seat committees, and at the bottom it says Red Lodge checking with committee to fill more seats. We'll check in, and it has Danae listed as being on the communications committee.
I heard her communicate. Did you not hear that?
I did. Just saying, so,
Yeah, so basically there's openings on those committees if anyone. You don't have to be a voting member.
yeah, okay, perfect.
And I specifically recused myself from it for scheduling availability.
Yeah, that's fine, I'm just a little worried about this though, but, my one concern is that just, and I don't know if this came up, is there's clearly going to have to be, there are gonna be fees, membership fees, and,
I didn't hear anything about that.
okay,
I haven't heard them discuss anything yet.
okay.
I
I
thought they said,
understood there were gonna be fees.
yeah.
Have we heard what that amount is?
No, they are working on that.
I think it was maybe a percentage of your resort tax. Just one of the things is that well, that's good for us because that means that Big Sky's paying a lot, those bigger communities are paying a lot more than we are. So as opposed to a set fee, but, you know, we'd have to look and see where in our world that falls in the budget item if there's a fee to pay.
And if we want to continually persist, this is an optional board. I dare you charge us a big number. See ya.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to. I think it sounds like, I thought I saw something on fees, but I don't see it in here, so.
Yeah, so there's a membership committee who's charged with coming up with the fee structures.
Oh, is that the plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they talked about needing to pay for a website, accounting software, things like
And
that.
that was just they were looking for cheapest versions on accounting software was a big part of it.
Jenny Muscat and Dan Walker are the two that are currently on that committee. For whatever that's.
Interestingly enough, wasn't the legislative one of them that filled up relatively?
Yeah, that was a kind of a hot button.
That to me was the one that I said if Tom were here, he would be going me, but.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I think I'm not sure if it's a gift or a curse, but I tend to be good at it, but I'm not sure I want to do more of it. I already do it for two other organizations, kind of, so.
Only two?
Yeah. Which organization are you representing now? I was sitting with the governor and we were talking about, sales tax, and I was representing the Restaurant Association. But, you know, the Restaurant Association is opposed to spot sales tax piece, and he says, doesn't Red Lodge have resort tax? I said, yes, but that's different.
I'm a different hat right now, and I have the capacity to put on this hat and that hat.
So, And mostly they were worried about, you know, someone like the city of Missoula trying to get a sales tax and having a sales tax in the city of Missoula and then having the county right outside of it, so you would have, and we have this a little bit here, right? Like, you know, so if you're staying at the Pollard, you have to pay a resort tax, but you can go to Rockford Resort and not pay a resort tax. And so,
Right.
so trying to have people in the same area have the same
Right.
taxation structure, so that you don't end up with somebody being significantly less expensive than another because of the tax. So that was the concern there, so, you know, and I think probably you know, most of these resort tax areas don't have that problem because the way they designed it, there aren't businesses outside the resort tax area
The
for the
difference
most
is that
part.
most resort taxes are 3 or 4%,
Yeah.
and a sales tax a lot of times can be 6 or 7 or 8, or, you know, I mean,
It
it can be a lot.
It can be more,
Yeah,
yeah.
a lot more, so you're really gonna notice that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're, spend about, you know, 30 cents on $10, then.
Anything else on that, on the resort tax committee?
Those are the main,
Resort tax.
those are the main things, if we want anybody to be on those committees and just getting our
Well-
rates nailed down.
And that email you sent out has all the committees on it?
I think, you know, I mean, just my opinion on this is that I think we need to understand what their agendas really are and make sure that their agendas align with our agendas as we drive in. Because, you know, we just want to be cautious about what we're advocating for, you know, and making sure we don't fall into something where we're advocating for something or helping to advocate for something that we don't necessarily want to advocate for.
That's why I thought you might be a good volunteer for the legislative.
Yeah.
Thank you for making the point.
Yeah.
We don't want to be represented by a,
That's exactly, yes, that's
Right,
exactly,
or
that's exactly
present
correct.
it as we back this view if it's not our view.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. All right, anything else?
And the next meeting was a month out
I don't know that they set a date.
from that one.
They had a 1
Did-
month out for the officers to meet. Yeah, the executive committee. I don't know that they set a full one yet. I'm assuming that'll come out with the full minutes when Cammy gets them.
Okay. Dave, update on budget timeline.
Fail. So let me ask, so when you say update on, like, when we're gonna start meeting?
Yeah, and when you would like us to become involved in the.
So Lonnie and I have a goal for this week to have that department head meeting set up with this kind of the first vision, to have that set up by the end of this week.
Yeah,
It will not be next week, so we're talking out a couple of weeks. There is, what I wanted to do, and if I had news cycles, what I wanted to do is pull up the resolution that we passed a couple of years ago and look at the specific date that has. In my mind, I'm thinking if it's March or May that has like an initial posting. But
okay,
we're gonna pass and exceed that. And then the other conversation along that is, I'm talking to another source sometime within the next week. We talked about this morning setting up a meeting for later this week, but he
Yeah.
has not yet responded
okay,
onto a time.
okay,
So I'm hoping to have a department head meeting sometime soon, and I'm gonna be pulling in Tom and also, Doug, and kind of having a little bit of a conversation and looking down the budget and kind of seeing if it compares what we wanna see and and if we have opportunities for improvement to communicate that out and stuff,
yeah,
so.
okay,
And that's part of the agenda that you're getting back with me on too,
Yeah.
timing wise.
Okay, so,
So what I don't know is the resolution. I did not check on that. I can do that in the background and see if I can find the date. It was on my to-do list today, I just didn't do it.
I'm sorry, maybe you're going to set up a time for a department head meeting, but the meeting won't probably happen for a couple of weeks, is what you're
Yes.
saying?
It
Okay.
will absolutely not happen next week,
Okay,
because I'm out
So-
next week.
okay, and then you're also setting up a separate meeting with Tom and Doug, the new city council rep?
Yes.
Okay, and Tom Coons?
That Tom.
Yeah, okay, and then, what are you discussing at that?
We're just gonna sit down and look at our budgets and our statements and kind of compare them to like what we see from the fire, and I know Doug has an interest, and it's just kind of a look and an understanding and saying where our initial opportunities and how to approach that. And then that'll be some of the guidance I use as I go meet with department heads and kind of some input there.
Did you want anyone from admin and finance to be there?
I don't know at this point. I certainly have no objection if they want to be, but at this point, I consider it kind of mayor's realm.
Okay.
In fact, the tricky part to me was how to pull Doug in
Yeah,
if he's a councilman. So,
As long as you just do
But-
one, you're okay.
yeah, no, yeah, that's, so not initially. If somebody wants to come and be there, I have zero problem with that, but I think at this point, it's collecting some initial information and getting it out.
okay,
And then what I'm looking for is the date set in that resolution, because that's when I need to get that information to council and pull it out.
okay,
And I'm looking at some spreadsheet formats that are a little different than what we've seen, so it'll be like, here's the budget of Red Lodge.
okay,
Granted, most of our conversation is on this little piece of it here, that's the general budget, but I want to start out with, here's the budget of Red Lodge, and then drill down from there.
okay.
So that's some of the stuff I know that's happening at a high level.
That all for that then? I mean, and I think that the thing for us is just wanting, wanting to know where we fall in that timeline is probably one of the things that's important. And then understanding, a little bit about what we have the ability and what, what's discretionary and what's non-discretionary is gonna drive into this, and this will come in a little bit in the next conversation, but, I think, understanding that, what we'd love to be able to do is capture what the needs are of the city, so that we understand what what are the requests and where we can go with the resort tax to make the resort tax valuable to the community. And I think that I think that really is gonna be, an important piece.
And I think we need to get that first snapshot for everybody to start moving down that track. Part of the problem I'm having, and I don't know if you have a higher source you might reach out to, but I just did like a search for budget, thinking I could find it, and it's still not there, so I've got to go back year by year to find the actual resolution for the date, because I would have thought budget was part of the resolution title.
Yeah?
I would have thought so too. I bet Jen might know.
So there was a resolution to set a timeline for budget, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
And I wrote it, and
Yeah.
sponsored it, so.
Is that early?
Was it 2017, 18?
It would have been sometime
No.
between 16 and 20.
This was brought up before. Remember, Jody, we were talking about this and all we could find was it was discussed at council. There was no resolution. We couldn't find the resolution, if I'm remembering this correctly.
I couldn't find it either, but I can find it if I go to the minutes of it, I'll bet.
Well, Jody and
So-
I've looked. That's what I'm saying. We talked about this before because it was brought up about the timeline and stuff, but we could not find that resolution. It was discussed at council and stuff, but it was not, we couldn't find a resolution.
I will backwards engineer it. I will bet you a nickel that it's there. We just didn't get it codified and posted, but it's in, but I don't feel so bad that I haven't found it yet, so.
Yeah, it was really weird. I mean, it was out there in the minutes, in the meeting, as a packet, but I don't know that it was,
Well, so that'll have the number if we go to it.
I don't, yeah.
It was definitely a separate resolution, not like rolled into one.
Nope, it was a single resolution. What we couldn't find is when they talked about the flow chart. I don't remember the flow chart ever being part of that resolution. But I can find, we will find that, and, because it does exist.
Yeah, well, and I had a copy of it just last year, because it was big.
All right, well, this really doesn't apply to us because it's
Right.
that's a bigger council thing, so.
Right.
Let's move on past that thing. And then we'll go to Lonnie with an update on, resort tax collections and spending. But Lonnie, if I could bring up a thing we discussed at our last meeting, since we've got both you and Danae on the line. We've had some confusion in the resort tax reports, since it seems like we do quarters by first quarter and second quarter of fiscal
Calendar
years.
year, not fiscal.
So, yeah, so I just wondering, from a financials perspective, do you always say the first quarter is January, or is the first quarter often July when you talk about the fiscal year? Because it seems like we have different reporting pieces there.
Okay, so Danae, correct me if I'm wrong. Danae redid your guys' report because you guys asked for it to be fiscal year. So that report that you guys got tonight is her redoing the whole report again by fiscal year.
Okay,
So my
Great.
first quarter is always based on calendar year. That's the way that it is set up to be reported, as based on calendar year. So quarter one is January, February, March, and that's how I do all my reporting.
But this report they're looking at today is reformatted for the fiscal year.
Yep, so in that, it's set up
Sorry.
by fiscal year, but quarter one is always gonna be January, February, March. 2 is gonna be April, May, June.
I'm slow. How is that fiscal year?
The way that it's organized in the report.
Oh, so, okay.
is there a reason that you do it on a calendar year quarters instead of fiscal year quarters?
No, not necessarily. That's just the way it was taught to me and how it was always done. I just continued the same reporting moving forward.
Gotcha. So we've just been a little confused by that, and I'm not saying it's not overcomable, but is that, I guess it's, Lonnie, do you ever use calendar year quarters in anything else you do, or is the resort tax the only place that you use calendar year quarters? Or is the resort tax the only place we use quarters?
No, like all my workman's comp, unemployment, that's all by quarters. And so, but it's calendar year quarters, because when I have to report it, it's the third quarter, but it's the third quarter of the calendar year, but it's actually the first quarter of the fiscal year.
Okay.
So, but those
So
reports are done by calendar year.
Okay, so that's.
Couldn't we just go by month, JFM? To keep it simple, and then we don't have those titles to try and compare to. Could we just, what I'm saying, AMJ, JFM?
I can set it up however you guys want it. I just need to know what you guys want, and then I can adjust it to that.
So Danae, on this report that you did, when you get paid in July,
Yep.
does that count for this fiscal year, or is it last fiscal year?
Last, it gets counted. So anything, for example, that is reported through June gets paid into July, and it goes into the next year's budget.
Okay, because you don't have that on here then, right? Because you're starting out quarter 3, because that,
Yes.
520,000 though would be September's pay total. So we need another
Yes.
quarter for the fiscal year.
Yes,
Above it.
if you guys want it to match the way that the budget is set up, then we need to do some more reworking on it.
Yeah, because if people are paying quarterly and they're paying July 20th, and that goes into 23-24 fiscal year,
No, it doesn't.
she just said it did.
When you record the money, you record it based on the quarter the date it was received, not the date it was incurred, correct?
The date, yes, the date that it was received as collected. So,
Yeah.
for example, this year, April, May, and June of 2024 will be reported in next year's budget.
Right. So, but this April, May, and June will be reported in next year's budget. But you don't have
Correct.
April, May, and June on this report. That's what I'm saying.
Right, yep, I have it split by the quarters. So if you want me to move it so that the way that so that it matches the budget, I can do that.
Right, that's what we want to make sure that, because that's what we need to know is how much we're collecting in this fiscal year of resort tax.
So right now, it says you collect, on the top of this report, it says you collected, $693,925. That was correct. That was actually what was reported. Was that?
For those. Correct.
Or that's what reported for those quarters, not when that was collected.
But
So
not,
then
yeah,
messes, I get.
Why we're confused.
yeah, so,
Now I understand why we're confused.
yeah,
And that
so,
it also explains, when I was doing some of this, I'm like, my numbers don't match, I couldn't get my numbers to add up to numbers we had before, but because of this difference between cash accounting and accrual accounting, right? So,
right, yep.
Basically, I think maybe we need, it's almost like there's two separate reports. One report is saying what cash was collected
Right.
and when it was collected, and a second report is saying what was accrued in that particular month, right?
Right.
So you literally, here's what we collected in July. I mean, you're gonna have big collections in July and
But it wasn't
October.
September
Ye-
or October, I guess.
No, I'm saying you're gonna have big collections in July, because
Right.
your July collections is April, May, June. You're gonna have your biggest collection is actually gonna be cash coming in October,
Right.
right? That's gonna be the most amount of money comes in cash in October.
For the.
July, August, September, to the
When
city.
Because that's, oh, yeah, because it's, gotcha.
Yeah.
So then the next question is,
I
which
get
one,
that.
which one is it, when we're reporting and budgeting, which one is it of those two flavors?
It's Lonnie, just to be clear, it's cash accounting. We, when we're budgeting for income based on when the cash comes in.
Correct.
So audit purposes, when we decided we're doing $1.8 million in resort tax collected, we have to take into account all collections that are paid to the city starting July 20th.
But Q4 is gonna be the big bounce, even though it was collected in Q3, they failed.
So when the
Yeah.
auditors, that transfer that we have to do is based on the amount that is collected that we receive in cash from July 1st to June 30th. So the stuff that's collected in July for the previous quarter, we have to include for that calculation to reduce the taxes, if that makes sense.
And
So
it's
July of this year which includes the stuff earned this year in Q2 calendar year, actually is the number that we use to figure out the property taxes for this coming November.
For the property tax relief, that the 5% that we transfer is based on what is collected from July 1st to June 30th, not what businesses for the previous quarter, like on the reports that Danae does, but the money that has been collected with the city. We don't go back.
So, and that is right on the sheet that Lonnie sent out today, where it shows we budgeted 1.8 million, collected through October was 836,000, November 13,936, December 8,600, January 229,000.
I think we just need to understand that we're dealing with two separate metrics,
Right.
and there's two separate reports.
We're at-
One is a report of the cash that comes into the city.
Right,
And cash is not really, you don't need to divide cash up into bar, restaurant, it's just literally how much cash comes in.
right.
Then what it is then this report that we have in front of us is really about what was collected by the businesses in any given month.
Right.
And they're just two separate pieces.
And
So for this fiscal year, we've collected right at $1.1 million in resort tax.
Yes.
According to that.
But it doesn't match the numbers that we see on these forms because this form is accrual based.
yeah, and this is the one that I remember seeing on council, because all I did is look at it and say, are we tracking where we thought, are we behind, are we
Yeah.
ahead or
And
behind?
honestly, this number right here is what you need to be looking at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we use
Um,
accounting for looking at those numbers, whereas my report is really just for the residents to see. It's really just more informational, but if we want to change it, I'm happy to do that so it matches accounting.
No, I don't think so. I think this report that you're producing is good. I mean, I think this one that has divided up is a good report. It's just, we just have to recognize there's two separate reports. One's for budgeting purposes and has to do
Yeah.
with cash, and there is
Right.
what's happening with resort tax. And I think if we're just clear about that and we know that, then it becomes less confusing. And I think we've just all been a little confused.
Is there a way we
Okay.
can work that in? How do we fix it for you guys? Or how do we fix it for us guys?
I think you could call this resort tax totals collected by businesses or something like that I don't know.
Lonnie, on that report that you sent out today, is that just the 3% resort tax?
It's got the
It's
1%.
got the one also?
Yeah,
Oh.
that's just the 3%. The 1% goes into stormwater. So that is not reflected on that one.
Because my main concern is, we're at 1.1 million, but we're having our slowest month moving forward, so we're probably not going to hit the 1.8, so we should be fine.
Yeah, I think we're a ways from that.
Yeah, just to make sure we,
Does our 1% impact property tax, or is that only the 3%?
it's a 3.
Lonnie, I will send you an email just to have you shoot me the 1% stuff too, so that I can put that in my graph that I'll show you guys in a minute here.
Okay.
Helpful. Okay. All right, so that really wasn't the piece. Lonnie, do you have any, I took that information you sent me and I built I added it into our graph. Do you have anything you want to add before I show that, or?
No, nope, what I sent you, if that's what you used, and yeah, no, we're good.
Yeah, it was interesting. I must have just had some wrong numbers because I actually had preliminary numbers for last budget year that were higher than what actually turned out, but that must have just been me. Will you add me into the waiting room if I'm in there? No.
I don't see you,
Okay,
but if you join, just make sure you choose no audio when you join,
yeah.
and then, I'll make you a presenter so you can share.
Is this the right, maybe I have the wrong thing here.
send it to you if you don't have it.
Cannot sign in, please check your network connection.
Are you on the network?
No, I don't have that.
Jody, do you remember if I sent out my little, yep, never mind, I did.
Okay.
Copy link. Text it to Tom.
Oh, I'm in.
Are you?
Yep.
And you chose no audio?
I chose no idea, that's why you're not hearing me.
Okay, excellent.
Not my first day.
Not your first rodeo. Hey. Now, actually, can you go ahead and present? Let me see if the meeting is set up so you can present our fact.
Yeah, it says, let me share screen. Click on that. Broadcast, 3, 2, 1, go.
Hey, look at that.
Okay. All right, so I basically just updated the spreadsheets that, we have had in the past. And I'll zoom in on these, two documents, basically these two pie graphs, and I've got the numbers that back it up as well. But it gives you an idea of where our money is currently going. 16% to tax relief, 12% to water, 14% to sewer, 9% to street operation and maintenance, 10 to street improvement, 13 to pool, 13 to parks, 7 to law, and 2 to admin. And because that's a little confusing, I did this one, which basically breaks that down to, water and sewer takes about a third, 27%, snow plowing and street, 20%, parks and pools, 26%, and then law enforcement, 7%. And then, but that, this just helps to give us a picture of, where is our resort tax going right now? And I think, the big change, and it doesn't really, because I've lumped in snow plows as well as the payroll that's going to snow plowing.
Well, they bought a snowplow and the street sweeper.
Yeah,
And that was
yep,
a huge chunk.
That's a big chunk of this. And here's the detail in it, that you can see, and what I will try to do is balance. So I went back through, I'll get income in here as well, and you can see kind of in the center there, it shows that last year our expenditures were about 1.11 million, and our revenue, so this is cash, right, was 1.17 plus $46,000 in other stuff. There was an item on there, Lonnie, that I didn't fully understand, because it wasn't an ARPA fund, but it was something like that, and I just put it into this other category.
It was the DNRC grant for Arbor Day for trees, I believe, is that extra one that's on there. Yeah. Okay,
that's a parts thing, so it went, then that'd be a parts part of it, so, yeah. And so, this just gives us, when we start talking about budgeting and looking towards the future, right? I think the important thing is that when you look at actual expenditures and you look at actual income here, it gives you an idea of what we're taking in and what we're pushing out. And then we can get a feel for what our other options are. When you look at the current budget, there's not a lot of flexibility. It's not like, oh, we've got this great fund that we can fund all this other stuff with, because we don't. And I think we have to really look at where this is going right now and what our priorities are, because we definitely, and what I would suggest, and I'm happy to start to do this as we build the budget, is talk about what are our reoccurring ones that we don't have any flexibility on, and what are our ones that maybe we have some flexibility on to be able to say, okay, here's what we're gonna find is that flexibility line is gonna be a pretty small
And that
amount.
fits into the conversation that you and I have had, that's my fear is that the decisions have been made such that there isn't any flexibility because it's
Yeah.
already pre-allocated and spent.
That's correct. You know, when you hire a position, right, you pre-allocate a lot of money to that position and the work product, like, you know, and we had this conversation at past meetings, is that, you know, when you hire someone to do park maintenance, you don't just have the cost of them doing park maintenance, you also have the cost of all of the stuff they have to do park maintenance with. And you can't really pull that back, because if you say, hey, we're not gonna buy gas for the lawnmower, well then,
Yeah.
you got a guy standing there wishing he could mow the lawn, and no gas to run the lawnmower that you bought the lawnmower with. So you get,
And it fits even at a larger scale when we talk about pool or capital improvement stuff. If it's all pre-allocated in debt service, basically,
Right.
that takes away our flexibility going forward. And the biggest raise you can give yourself is having stuff paid off.
yeah. So, and I think that that's some of our hope, is that, you know, that we can think a little bit big picture and understand where we're headed with this, you know, and like, you know, when we start to have, like, we had some conversations about sidewalks on Main
Right.
Street last time, right? You know, I mean, obviously, you know, you commit to sidewalks on Main Street, that becomes a project, right? And then that project, but if you got everything committed, you're not gonna ever get to projects. And so, that's just any questions on what I got here, or on any of these amounts, or?
So, just when you were reviewing those, you know, we had some pretty large expenditures out of public works, you know, the new snowplow, the street sweeper.
We were, and I will send Lonnie, will you, if you, and I'll send you an email on this too, is just sending me the detail, is it, because obviously in this, it's just grouped, so I don't get to see where the actual expenditures are.
Just tells me that because we paid cash for it, not that we gave away the next 10 years worth.
Right, no, it was cash, it was a cash
Yeah,
outlay.
that,
We only have one loan,
Right,
we'll have Lonnie confirm this, there's only one loan in resort tax right now.
is being serviced by resort tax.
That's being serviced by resort tax. I don't know if the street, the street, or the water and sewer, are those connected to bond, or are they just transferred into water and sewer?
So we have the pool bond is taken out of resort tax. The water and sewer, those are transfers, but when we do bonds through water and sewer, that money is ear tagged to come out of resort tax. So they look at that money that's coming out of resort tax into those two funds as part of the whole bond process. So
We don't have the option of not paying for it out of resort tax, right? That's pre-dedicated money, pre-pledged money.
right, on the previous bonds that we have, yes. It's included as revenue source for those bonds.
So going back to your spreadsheet, your wonderful little pie chart, what's missing is the flexibility piece versus the pledged piece.
Yeah.
right.
Can I comment?
Yeah.
Yes,
On the
please.
board?
Yes.
Yeah.
So your revenue, I understand what Lonnie is saying, but your revenue bonds that water and sewer is backing, whether it's going directly into the bond or into the bond council's evaluation of that fund, you can also raise revenue through increasing your rates, your water and
Correct.
sewer rates. So if you chose to increase water and sewer rates to cover bond requirements for your outstanding debt in your enterprise funds, in my opinion, that is flexible funding.
Well, and that's,
But
and
you
that,
have to take
yeah.
action with your other enterprise revenue
and that was-
to increase your rate.
And that was my question, is if we cover it from other sources, is that available in the resort tax? Or is that part of the agreement that it's already pledged, not because the money's there, but is it ear tagged for that specific bond repayment in water sewer? Lonnie, did that make sense?
Yeah, kind of like I said, the previous bonds, when resort tax, when those transfers, those payments, those were all figured into those previous bonds. And like Brent was saying, we've already done the increase to water rates for the more current. But bond council and stuff, they still look at that resort tax money coming in. So it's figured into the bonds. And I don't know if I would try to push doing more water rate increases. It's 250,000 out of resort tax that people aren't having to pay that out of their pocket, and that's just my opinion. But like I said, that resort tax money was figured into previous bonds and the most recent ones too. It was looked at.
Yeah, and I guess I wouldn't advocate, I'm not advocating for one thing or another, but, I guess my opinion is that money, you can raise, if you wanna raise $250,000 through other revenue sources, predominantly increasing your rate, that is a policy choice the council can choose to make.
And then we have the
To generate
flexibility
that
to
revenue.
use that money any place where the resort tax can be used.
Correct, but you have to generate the revenue by increasing rates.
Yeah, whether it's a good policy choice or not, that's what council did,
Right, that's
Yeah.
the relevance of what I
but yeah,
think.
Okay.
yeah, I agree. I would,
Okay.
and I will say, when we did the resort tax renewal, what we said, and this has come up in some conversations, and I think this is important, because when we did the resort tax renewal, what we said is, we would continue to do that 250 into water and sewer, but we would not do more.
And we put a cap on how much of it could be pledged.
Yeah, but what we would do is we would
No,
say,
we're going
we
to-
advocated for the 1%, which would do stormwater, which is why, so when we're looking at the rest of it, the rest of it, this is going back in history, is, that it's not rock solid policy, but that was kind of where water and sewer would stay. And at one point, that 250 was 50% of our resort tax, and now it's less than a quarter of our resort tax. So our hope is as time went along, the resort tax would continue to increase, but our commitment to water and sewer would not
As
continue.
a percentage.
As a
would
percentage, that's
decrease.
correct.
Now, what I'm remembering is in the
We talked
administrative,
about
in the administrative ordinance, when I was on council.
Right, because we were at that meeting, and I know you and Micah were big proponents of capping how much of the resort tax could go to bond payments.
Right.
And I don't know if that got put in there or not. You'd have to look back at that ordinance to see if that,
Okay.
There's no caps in it.
yeah, I don't
Okay.
think,
Not possible.
yeah, I don't think that
So
got put in.
then it came back, then it was, and the discussion was then, if we don't do it, then we have to rely on future councils to not make the decisions for the councils that follow them by dedicating all the money.
Right, to bond payments.
So I think, what this shows us is that, we really have to look at, where the money's going and, in that, what is flexibility, where that flexibility is. And I think one of the things that I was hoping for when we committed to the pool is that we weren't going to try and use up all the rest of it, and we were gonna be committed to trying to get that pool paid down quickly.
Yes.
So that we would still, because it was important that we still had a chunk to be able to continue to do these capital improvements with, and that we didn't get eat up. Now, we have spent, and I think this is an important thing to note, is that, 10% has gone to streets capital improvements, and that's snow plows and the street sweeper.
But if we pay cash for them, then that's a done decision.
It's a done
We don't have to
decision,
deal with it.
yeah. And, but I think that was a good decision,
Yes.
right? Like, I think that was what people wanted. They wanted Public Works to be driving good, reliable snow plows, not trying to piece together, because when we did this, they were piecing together old snow plows, and that was, the community said, hey, snow plowing is important to us, let's make sure we have the right equipment for snow plowing, and I think that helps tourists, it helps residents, it helps everybody, and so I think everybody was excited about that, so,
On the streets language was on the,
yes, it was.
So while we're on that, I don't mean to derail this at all. So we talked, and by the way, so there is a conversation that has been initiated on sidewalks, FYI, so we're talking to DOT and whatnot. But if we come up to do that, is that something we can use resort tax to do?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, I mean, I think, you know, I mean, part of what we said is, you know, when you start talking about downtown sidewalks and downtown improvements to the downtown,
That's
I think that's very, very applicable. What we were hoping for is the streets and sidewalks that are being put in, or hopefully put in, as part of the sewer,
the storm
water sewer project would be paid for out of that 1%. Out of the 1%, we would get stormwater,
right,
and we would get streets and sidewalks
as part of it.
above it. But, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I think
and-
we all
and-
recognize that that project is almost exponentially more expensive than one would hope, but,
Right.
but at least if we have something to move forward, because while it's easy to just focus on the resort tax, and this is why I want to add in the stormwater as part of it. For the folks who are paying the resort tax and the folks who are collecting the resort tax, 25% of our resort tax is going to stormwater. And we have to remember that as, it needs to show on this pie, because it's a big chunk of what actually is getting paid.
And what we should do is we should make sure we call it stormwater and related something, so
Yeah.
that's there. So the second question, Rocky Fork Inn property that city is going to acquire and turn into a park, or presumably, that's the conversation that has been started. To my understanding, nobody had ever said where it is we're gonna pay for that. Whereas that 12.5% is basically we're gonna pay 12.5% of the sales price of that property
Yeah.
to acquire a future park. Is that something we can use resort tax without?
I think that's perfectly appropriate item to consider. And it seems reasonable to me that, I mean, that would be a major capital improvement to our park infrastructure, and I think that would be along the lines of what the resort tax is for.
And Mike, okay, now is my question, because my goal is to make sure it's less than 12.5%. I'm just trying to put together all the pieces of where that can come from or not.
What, did you find out what the appraised value of that property was pre-flood?
Yes,
What?
not as much as I thought it was.
Okay.
It's 1 point something, but it was low, it
You
wasn't
have to buy
high.
it for its pre-flood value?
Yeah, so
FEMA does.
that's what the FEMA did. So that was,
Okay.
that was a correction, that I misstated that in the last meeting, so that'll be the first thing as a comment. I've already notified the property owner, city council, and the press that I lied.
The whole point of
Um,
the FEMA grants is because they don't want people to rebuild.
Yeah, so they give you,
Did they write you out?
They write you out.
they make
It's a
the
3-year
person whole.
Yes.
Yes. It's a 3-year average on that. And don't quote me on it, but 1.4-ish or something. But, and then, so they pay 75%. You can't pay the match from federal funds. The state has mechanisms that'll wholly pay half of the 25%, which gets us down to 12.5% that the city needs to come up with now. And my thinking had been that part of that thought process, without reading people's minds, was that this was a potential, assuming it's not already all pre-dedicated and given away.
Well, it's sure not
If it's
coming out
like-
of general fund.
If it's a street, you know, if it's a street sweeper and we pay for it and it's gone, great, the decision's made next year, but you know what? Next year we get to make that decision again based on what's sitting on our table.
I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on
Well, if it was
being
like
resort tax?
2 million, just give or take, I mean, you're at about 156,000 to buy park, basically.
And then you're probably another $100,000 to make it a park.
Actually, we get money for that.
Oh, bonus. Well, then,
It'd be
there's,
nice to have a proposal that includes what that park would look like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
It can't have structures, it can't, there's a list of things that it can't look like more than
Can't
there
have
is a list
permanent
of.
structure,
but
so,
like maybe Parks Board can
yeah.
come up with
Yeah.
something, I don't know.
So theoretically, this is why my Thursday and Friday, theoretically, there's a SWAT team on this on Thursday or Friday, but the state has not called back and confirmed the time yet.
Any thoughts on that?
I mean, my only thought was obviously the Eagles Nest is the next one, and I know people are working on that too, but.
The problem, to date, so this is all secondhand information, so we call that rumor. But my understanding is, to date, the owner of that property has not been interested in chatting. However, there was another conversation between him and another third party where it was pointed out that he has a liability if another flood comes through and stuff that's on his property. And it seemed to be a toe in the tent to maybe start a conversation.
He also might be more interested if he realizes it's pre-flood value.
I don't know,
I'm just.
and I don't know that that one is necessarily available for that too. We can't do this over and over and over again.
Yeah, if it wasn't
Well,
already announced
we
for.
could have, applied for it. I think there was a deadline to
And probably
sign up for
yeah.
that, yeah.
Probably.
And because I know Courtney did reach out to him to see if he was interested in also doing it. I think the issue is that his pre-flood value wasn't very much because it had
'Cause it
already
was-
been basically condemned,
Yeah,
where theirs was a home, a bed and breakfast, that's,
For tax purposes, it's a pile of shit.
yeah.
Yeah.
I said, it's actually as much of a liability as it is an asset.
Has he been paying his taxes? Sorry, to take a short, deeper.
I do not know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
It'd be worth.
Well, someone else might have already bought
checking
that.
into that.
Yeah.
You can just go on,
Yeah.
online,
But-
on the, yeah, it'll show right there if you're like.
But that's not the purview of this meeting.
Right.
No.
No.
No, so I think what we've got there is, and it's essentially what I would call this is a suggestion of something that needs to be considered when we're thinking about budget. And
I would love to.
and this is gonna drive into this next conversation that I know Jody wants to bring up.
Yes.
And I'll let you get there in just a second, but I wanna do two things before we get there. But is that it's important for us to realize what it is we have to work with so we know what we can accomplish, right?
Yeah.
Lonnie, do you have anything else you'd like to add in terms of budgeting and expenditure before we move on to the next item, which is, that Jody's gonna talk about?
No, I think I'm good.
Are we clear on the reports and information as presented? We just had a suggestion on how to label it so we can help.
Yeah, I
call
think
people's attention to what they're looking at.
it clarified for me. It's just, we were struggling a little bit sometimes with the difference in quarters between fiscal year quarters and calendar year quarters, and I think, sometimes you just have to accept what it is, and it sounds like.
If we just draw a
it's
line
easier.
down the middle of it and say,
This makes sense. When we start with quarter three, quarter four, quarter one, quarter two, I think that makes a lot more sense. It was a little more confusing when it was quarter one, so this seems clear, and we also are clear on the fact that this is when the, money, the resort tax essentially was incurred, not when it was delivered to the city,
Right.
and those numbers will not always match.
right,
And
so
so-
is our property tax is based on the incurred date or the collected date?
The
property tax,
related on the collected date is what Lonnie
Right.
said.
okay.
Right,
So that's not what this is then?
No.
This is the incurred date,
That's the incurred date.
right.
which is great for tracking, this is great for tracking are we ahead or behind schedule?
No, it's not.
No, the collections are. I
No.
mean, it
You have
is,
to
it's
look at the
just, you just have to, in your mind, you have to, this gives us detail about when restaurants were busy and when hotels were busy and when people were drinking, right? Like, and then the other report gives us information on when the cash came in.
Like, I would,
On this sheet right here that Lonnie gave us, shows you exactly where we're at, on how much has been how much has been collected, and how much we budgeted so far.
You asked a property tax question, so I'll just, bring up this report too, which, I had done and has been used a couple of times. If I can find where it shows on my thing here, come on.
And then if we go with the resort tax, what we have to be able to do is sell that as this is a benefit to the city, not a benefit to one property owner.
Right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know,
Well,
I think the great thing about it is it's connected physically through a bridge with Rotary Park, so, you know, it's not gonna end up being an island, and it's a place that people like to go already, so. I wanted to bring this report up, because I think there's a couple of things that this shows, and it's really important. We have used this a couple of different times, but this just compares our actual property tax collections and our resort tax collections. Lonnie, I wasn't positive on the property tax collections for last fiscal year, so I just need to get that from you. What it shows, two things, is when we did the resort tax renewal, we made an estimate of where we thought the resort tax collections would go. This is just the 3%, by the way.
Okay.
You can see that we have, since, 2020, basically exceeded what our projections were. And the projections were simply a 3% increase. The dip in 2022 was obviously the flood, which just hurt us, significantly in that month of July and in August. You can still see 2021 was, the best, and we'll see what happens coming forward here. But it does show, where, property taxes
As long as that red doesn't
exceeded.
drop below the yellow, we're.
Yes, yeah, we are, but also you can see, just input into the community right now, resort tax is pushing in more than property tax, and it's benefiting the citizens.
Yes.
Greatly, and so you can see, you also get a feel for what Red Lodge would look like without our resort tax, which is, even to be where we are today, you'd have to have double the property tax, because there's no way you could get away with that.
That property tax, though, that's the city's general mill, right?
That's the city's general mill, that's correct. It does not include things like
Fees.
entitlement and other, it's not general fund revenue, it's simply property tax collection. And what you'll note, is that when they sent out the property tax appraisals last, July, they noted that Red Lodge was the only community that had a decrease in property tax over the last 10-year period, and it was because of the resort tax and that resort tax. And, as resort tax has increased, the way that we're doing it has resulted in more and more property tax relief. It also has to do with that bump that we ended up giving back a big chunk of resort tax. So that's, that's where we are today. I just thought I would bring that up. I'll keep this updated as well, but it just gives you a feel for that.
Okay. Enjoy the lights, Chris.
All right, Jerry, you want to bring up your?
Okay, so in public.
Well, we're,
Yes.
not to make you rush, but
Okay.
we want to make sure.
No, that's okay.
We don't,
Public safety is looking at ways to, help pay for.
the public safety
The public
committee.
safety, yeah, the public safety committee, standing committee. We, have, all of our salaries for our police department is currently coming out of general funds. Any capital expenditures are coming out of resort tax. We bought 2 new police cars this last year. We also have our fire department to the tune of 28 mills coming out of our general funds. That's what the city pays for our fire protection. And so public safety is asking, and part of this also comes down to events. We have a lot of events in the summertime, and we haven't really been passing those fees on to the event organizers because they're generating resort tax. So, but it still costs the city money, especially for extra police. And in the summertime, both our fire and our police department are hit hardest by protecting our tourists and our citizens. So right now, the way it's written, we cannot pay for any salaries out of or any, admin fees or anything like that out of the resort tax. We can only do capital expenditures. And they were talking that it would be nice to do some type, the Public Safety Committee,
Okay.
sorry, a survey to ask the public, what are your priorities? Especially for, it could be questions about our police department. Do you want 24/7 coverage? How much are you willing to pay for that? Would you be willing to allow some of the resort tax to help cover their summer, expenses, including salaries, since that's when they get hit the most with tourism, the increase in, and second homeowners that move back. We have, really our town grows from, probably 2,000 people to 5,000 people, our surrounding area. So these are just questions, and I know that there's not a lot of leeway in the resort tax budget. The other questions we could ask would be, would you be willing to, support it through a public safety district? Or would you rather have it come out of the resort tax? Because it's about priorities at that point. What are your priorities, as far as, yeah, we have great parks, but, then we can't afford to pay our police department or pay our 28 mils to our fire department.
Are we looking at changing that so it's not mill-based?
The public safety stuff. So
Specifically the 28 mils for fire.
So let me tell you what I think we can do, and then kind of push back some of the hesitations. So my understanding, and I look to this group to correct my understanding or realign my expectations, is that we can use resort tax to pay capital expenditures.
Right.
So my understanding is that there have been previous conversations, and I am not opposed to them at all, to say, rather than having a negotiation with the fire department, which is a city obligation to provide that service, this is what we're giving you right now, which, by the way, is the result of a negotiation, so revisiting it is not off the table. Can we do X dollars here, and can we pay you in two different streams of funds based on capital improvement? So,
Right.
so if they're buying a new truck, then I can pay that, and therefore I can deduct from the 28 mils the part that we paid for from that line. So we can reduce our 28 mils if we can appropriately use resort taxes to do so.
We did talk in admin and finance about changing it from a lot of our, because we do the library out of mills, they get 7 mils. There's nothing, and then our fire department gets 28 mils, and.
Which
at
has
the
never
end
been
of-
a problem until this year.
Right, because the value of the mill went up such that the number of mills that we can actually assess keeps going down. And so the percentage of our general fund to the fire department and to the library is continuously getting larger. And they're getting more of the pie than other things are. So what we were talking about, one of the options was to switch it to a dollar amount plus inflation type of thing.
Let's come back to
So-
just, because there's two conversations
There is,
going on
absolutely.
here.
There's a lot of options.
And while I
Yeah.
would be happy to engage in the second part of the conversation, let's focus on the first conversation, which is, and I think this comes back to what we were saying, is there are city operational expenses, right? And the city's general fund the city is committing to operational expenses of police protection, city hall operation, general fund expenditures that currently right now exceed its income.
Correct.
And the question comes is, does the community, does the council, and then, but more importantly, does the community,
Right.
The council
What-
representing the community.
want to see us not focus on what we've been focusing on with resort tax and move resort tax funds into city operational expenses?
And I'm gonna add,
Specifically though, for public safety.
Yeah, but I will say is we did ask very specifically that question when we did the renewal,
and the
and what we got
feedback
was
we-
a hell no.
yeah, the feedback before was not unambiguous.
No, it was not.
It
unambiguous.
wasn't, but I just want to say that, and I said this at the Public Safety Committee, at that time, we had just gotten through with a couple of police chiefs that were not very popular, and their style of policing was not very popular. And I think there was some backlash from that, you know, and I could be wrong, but I think that,
The only thing I would say is that, you know, there was also the hell no was on just city administrative.
was, yeah.
It
wasn't just police.
I think there was a
but it
reluctance
was
to
on
move
city
from.
attorney and judge,
Yeah.
and it was that whole.
And I think it comes down to one, something, and I, you know, and I advocate for this, and I think this aligns with my opinion too. But I think the challenge that we have is that when the resort tax was first passed, it was just capital.
Yeah.
And so it was a slide for us to say, hey, can we spend some operational money? And what we leaned into was parks and snow plowing, right?
Right,
And people were like, yes, but don't let this be a slippery slope,
right.
where now all of a sudden it's gonna be more, and I would have that.
So let me offer my two thoughts on this. The first, which is kind of in line with your thinking, Jody, in that there's not a real risk in that our resort tax is set and is not gonna come up for another 20 years. Our 1% is already set, so the backlash of pushing it is
Well, it has
way
to go
down
up
the
for a
road.
vote, whatever changes.
Well, yeah,
we
no,
do,
no,
yeah,
yeah,
it
because
has
the
to
only
go
ones
up.
who can change it is that. So the worst thing that will happen is they'll say no. So I can see your line of thinking on that.
Right.
On a bigger picture, when I look at trying to resolve the trust issues between the community and the local government,
Mhm.
which, I mean, that's literally driving every conversation, everything, and this conversation you've seen in council meetings and whatever else. I am really hesitant to go back and do that, at the very least, until we've done some other things first. When I can put forth a budget that says, here's what it is, and everybody says, okay, I get it, and I understand it, and when the community starts reaching out to us and pushing back and saying, we want you to do this, what are the options to pay for it? That, to me, is it's a pull model versus a push model. That would make me feel way, way warmer and fuzzier about doing it. Now, as I was listening to your questions, I'm trying to figure out, you know, because I agree that the question should have been had, was not, do you want 7x24 police support? It was present a menu. Here's the chicken, the hamburger, and the steak. Which would you like, sort of a thing?
Sure.
What are you willing to give up in order to have this?
Right.
There are forms of that conversation that I think
What
would
are your
be
priorities?
valuable to do that, but I don't want it to be, it's almost like redirect some of resort tax to those is one of the small items of choices, not, it's an also ran, not a leading part of that conversation. And I, you know, I mean, council is council, council doesn't
Right.
report to the mayor, but my agenda, did I just say that?
You did.
That was weird. My direction or my thought process is, I'm working to build that trust up, and that scares me as being counter to that.
So.
Okay, before we
Go
get
ahead.
Jeremy's
Yeah,
thoughts,
I'm
before you go.
sorry.
I've been waiting for it.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So my concern with that is muddling the survey results between, a little bit what Dave was saying, the push-pull, between what we would want from a survey saying, what do you want the resort tax? You know,
Right.
what are those priorities versus, you know,
Well,
and if you say, or safety district, and now you're having, well, I don't know, now,
I know,
why not just have all resort tax toward property tax relief, screw it, you know?
yeah.
Because that is where that goes,
Well, and.
unless it's distinct conversation.
And I mean, the other thing that we had been talking a lot about in admin and finance was actually doing the petition to annex in the city of Red Lodge to Red Lodge Rural Fire Department, which is a property tax increase.
And that was my problem when that came up when I was on council. I don't have a concern with that conversation, but have an honest conversation.
Yeah, I mean,
This
it is
this is a way to get 28 mills back into
The
the
general
general fund without us giving you a property tax increase.
Right.
It'll be that mean fire district in the county that comes in and gives, but we didn't do it.
No, well, you had it,
Um,
you signed the petition, you know, it, and I just think we have to start having those honest conversations with people. I mean, and however we do that, I mean, however, you know, we do a couple different surveys on, because we were gonna talk about, you know, do we do another survey too on people's priorities for the resort tax, or are we just going to continue, you know, just kind of sharing what?
What if your survey says, we're out of money, please list the following services you'd like to see cut first?
Yeah, I mean, it could be,
Yeah.
that, it really could be. I mean, we're getting to that point.
Brent, do you have any thoughts you want to chime in on?
Sorry. I mean, I think they're important conversations. Appreciate y'all just having me
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
We didn't scare you off, did we?
Life might scare me off, but not you guys necessarily.
This is longer than we usually
I know.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is.
well, Dave's
Yeah.
here, and,
Yeah.
and if you want a meeting to go along, invite both Tom and Dave. I have-
We are pretty good that we
I-
usually go
An hour?
an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, no more. We do a hard stop and stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah, are you convinced that we can utilize you in this role and not create a conflict of interest for you?
I don't feel like there's a conflict, but, I mean, yeah, I don't feel like there's a conflict. If they are, I'd probably just resign if I saw them coming,
Okay.
so, but I don't.
Let's
I don't
just know we have to
envision
figure out how to
one.
address that, because what I don't want is a situation where you guys have to take yourself out of bidding project X because of, you know, I don't want to ever get.
Yeah.
No, we would
I
never
don't-
get there.
Yeah, I don't think,
Okay.
I don't really see that happening.
Right, Dave?
Not at this committee, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get your email in before Thursday.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
I just don't want that survey to be framed like,
Yeah, and, well,
cops need money, do you want it to come out of resort tax or a property tax hike?
yeah, I mean, but basically that's what it boils down to. I mean,
Yeah.
Well,
how
no,
we-
it really doesn't. We're out of money, what do you want to give up, is right on there too.
Yeah, it would be. So, I mean, I guess if
Yeah, I
I
think-
do want direction from you guys, because, I mean,
I think here's the direction that I would offer, and I think I agree with Jeremy, if I'm hearing this right, is that I think you could do a city survey that addresses general fund expenditures, or you could do a survey on resort tax, but I think those are two separate surveys that need to be separated by some time frame. Because I think asking about priorities for resort tax funding,
After,
Is-
they just told you 2 years ago?
yeah, is.
it was 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's good, yeah, it's gonna be 4 years ago. I think it would muddle the piece, because what you would be doing when you ask the question, and maybe it is that, you know, would you rather see resort tax go to helping police protection or improving parks? You know, what I mean, or, you know, would you rather see increases in water rates? Or, you know, what I mean,
Yeah.
so like if you said, hey, we could throw $200,000 of resort tax or $250,000 of resort tax to law enforcement,
Mhm.
but what that's gonna result in is that there's not gonna be a payment into water and sewer, and they're
Right.
so we're gonna have to look at water and sewer and see if water and sewer can survive without that. So it's figuring
It
out,
is.
what are you not gonna, you can't not make the pool payment.
Yeah, those are
You know,
obligations.
I mean, we could cut the park maintenance person.
They're
And-
not gonna want that.
No,
because
I
that's-
I don't want that,
Yeah, no,
I'm just
that's
saying,
way up
you know,
there.
but that's the conundrum we're in, and that's what I think is important for us, you know, from a resort tax committee, we before we ask a question, we need to understand what really is our flexibility there, because I also
Yeah,
don't
we
think
need
we
to know
wanna say, next time they go and say, hey, you know, we need another, you know, we need a new snowplow, or we need a new road grader to help maintain the, you know, to remove snow. Oh, sorry, we can't do that because we have no flexibility.
Right,
You know, I think that's the stuff we have to be careful about.
And we can't do when you're a kid and your parents say, well, I'm gonna let you decide, because I know you'll make the right decision, and then you make your decision and they retract it. Okay, no, I'm sorry, you didn't make the right decision.
I know. Well,
I'm not doing that.
I mean, so Dave, are you saying that you want the opportunity to go through this budget cycle before we do anything? before we act on this, because we've been basically told for the last 2 years that we need to, it's imperative, it's, you know, I mean, we have got to do something.
And I think there are some things, so for instance, that trash conversation, that has to happen right
Right.
now. That's that we pay more than we collect. That's a problem.
For garbage in town.
And so that's a standalone fix, but I think my default preference is I'd rather get through a budget cycle and get public trust and then have a conversation, but that doesn't mean you can't push me, you can't
Yeah,
challenge and push back against me.
Right, and I just know that when the last contract with the police happened, it was stated by the prior mayor that she basically promised their negotiators that council would act, that we would come up with some long-term solution for funding of our police department.
And so what I will say right now is, and I know, and we've got folks on the phone that they're gonna go, "Pew!" But the answer is where we do that from is general fund. And so, again, even before going to the city, even going to council, where's that money gonna come from? And if part of it, going back to if we can buy a fire truck or we can do something from the resort tax.
Well, they sent
And-
over, I don't know if it was you or Tim, somebody sent over the fire department budget, so we have that on how that money's being spent. So we can go back in and we can do a budget amendment if there's a piece of equipment or something out there, or equipment that was purchased.
And I
From
think
resort
that's
tax.
something to pursue outside of this, but I think we
Right.
have that conversation.
But they did do their part, I mean, I don't remember if it was.
Yeah, I mean,
them or
you
Tom.
know,
They sent it
I've
over.
changed hats, but we can work on that process. I don't see that as being a game changer in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I think that's realistic. But what we need to know from this committee's perspective is,
Right.
where's that money coming from in resort tax, right?
Right.
I mean,
What else
you know,
is it coming away from?
the income and expenditures last year were within $50,000 of each other, right?
Right,
So,
yeah.
and yeah, we've got this bigger budget that is really, administrative
don't
more
have
than
to-
it's guidance.
But you don't have to buy a new snowplow this year, because when it was purchased last year, that was a cash.
No, but I guess I worry, but, you know, again, what I say is, you know, so if we say this is gonna be the fix, and then all of a sudden,
Then we
now,
take away next year's
now
snowplow.
you're in 80, you know, like, let's say you said, all right, we're gonna pull $80,000 a year, and we're gonna do $80,000 a year. Now you're stuck in $80,000 a year, you know, and, I mean, I'll tell you right now, just from a side point, is this quarter's resort tax are gonna be less than last year's resort tax for this
Yeah.
quarter.
Year over year is gonna be down.
That's my guess. I mean, I felt like I didn't look, last quarter, should have been up. But, just based on my stuff, but
It was, January was awful.
January was awful. And February is,
Not much
Well,
better.
lack of snow is not helping.
it's not, and.
Last weekend was good.
We had snow, no.
Yeah, well, and there were tournaments, and it was a 3-day weekend, and, yeah, but.
Like, did you think the tournaments were beneficial?
I had some people walking around, but not,
overly.
I think you guys had, I took Hattie to Pizza Co.,
Mhm.
and there were lots of kids coming in,
Okay.
so I think Pizza Co. did
Yeah,
good
I
from
think,
it.
yeah, that would be a business that would do well.
And
Yeah,
Subway,
that's what I
Subway
figured,
and
yeah,
Pizza
Subway,
Co.,
yeah, Subway's big, yeah.
those are the two places they hit.
All right, I don't wanna keep, wanting to hear any
I know,
longer either, so.
Well, I will approach it with public safety then, that we'll hold off on a survey until we start going down the budget process. And and honestly, I don't even know what questions to ask in that survey, or how to go about that.
And maybe as you start
And I think that needs to have a
putting,
bigger
as
conversation.
maybe as you start putting together, that can kind of help us define what the boundaries are too.
Yeah,
By the way, I did find the resolution, so you have it in your inbox. The
Okay.
reason it wasn't showing up as a search is because the name of the resolution is R3845. There is no description in it. So it is there, it is filed. I just found it
yeah.
based on the date, so.
But do we, as a committee, want to do of a survey.
I think
Or we did,
it would be great to do a survey again and just ask people their opinions on the resort tax. You know, do they, I mean, you know, we could look at the,
What are we gonna do to make sure it's not a monkey survey, and it just, to make sure it's a valid and real
you know,
survey, because we've seen some pretty crappy surveys.
I think it's how you write the survey, and I think, but when we go back to the way we did the last survey, is we asked people a lot of ranked choice stuff, you know, and I think those questions, they encourage people to honestly think about what, you know, they're not yes, no questions, they're how important questions,
Right.
you know,
I just,
so.
you know, I'm getting flack on your ambulance survey.
Great. What kind of flack? We can talk about it.
Yes.
Well, I was just thinking, if we did our survey and included, you know, ranked choice, like, what would you like to have your, you know, and put in there public safety,
Yeah,
you know, and just see how it plays out again. You know, it may still be the bottom of the barrel where they don't wanna spend it.
Well,
On
especially
that.
if we put in a line like workforce housing or something.
Right, yeah.
but
And-
I mean, Big Prairie spends money on workforce housing,
Yeah, they
resort
do,
tax,
yeah.
you
And
know,
we
I
did
mean,
put
so-
that in there before, and it was like, no, it was
pretty
right there was,
clearly no.
Well,
yeah.
it's what,
But
again, things are
There's-
different now.
Things are different,
Both
yeah.
of ours, safety and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think it would be great if, and I can tell Sandy that, the Resort Tax Committee is going to do a survey, and they'll include in there on, you know, ranked choice on what people would like to spend the money on again. And if it's clearly no, then, you know, we'll approach it as then, well, okay, are we gonna have to do a public safety district? Or are we going to have to ask for an increase in mills for the general fund?
I do like an open-ended survey much better than
Yeah.
otherwise you'll have, you know.
Right, yeah, no, but I think I think this group, I mean, we did a great job with the survey before, and I would like ours to go out before we do anything else.
You know, this is really a question for you, but, you know, obviously if funding is an issue, one of the ways that communities fund services is through annexation. Is that
That
part of the
conversation
plan?
is already in place.
Yes,
So I was actually,
Yeah,
you were
that-
just picking up brainwaves
I
going
know,
across
because,
there.
yeah, we've had that conversation a lot. I mean, the first people on scene for Remington Ranch are our police, our police. Always, you know, and your first responders too. of
And
course, but
so,
yeah.
that conversation has already started, yes. Particularly as we have some developments, that are looking at adjacent properties and stuff, so.
Okay,
Well, thank you guys.
thank you.
I appreciate your input.
Lonnie or Janae, do you have anything before we sign off here?
Nope, not for me.
Nope, not for me either.
I
Thank
have,
you
I
very
have
much
an
for
8
being
o'clock
on.
in the morning, so I don't plan on being in till 9, just by way of information.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you.